Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a special warm welcome to our first guest here at our Learn With Us Selling Print Online. Lawrence, welcome. You're from Agfa. So why don't you introduce yourself very shortly so we can, who are we talking to basically? You're not a dancer, right?
No, I'm not. I'm not into dancing. But I'm into software. So that's why I'm, among others, in a career, always been working for Agfa, always on software solutions. And for the past 12 years, I must say, that has been the web to print, among others. So I'm product manager for web to print, but also busy with other web-related work at Agfa.
But very welcome anyway. And I also want to welcome my colleague, Jacques Michels from INKISH Benelux. And I think that we have to make a full disclaimer here because are you old buddies or your old colleagues, or how is it? You know each other anyway, right?
Yeah. The moment that a PostScript error threw up on Jacques' machine, I was a service guy in those days.
Yeah. And if we have young attendees here among our visitors, PostScript is a pre-PDF, right?
Yeah, indeed.
I remember it was terrible times, basically. I mean, and you know, Lawrence, if we look at the idea with this session is, I mean, one thing is that the pandemic has maybe fast forwarded and pushed a little bit in relation to ordering differently than we did before. But I mean, just the fact that technology makes it simpler and more easy for people to order, that is, it's both an opportunity and a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, true. I was pretty curious, so I went back in history and looked at the order volumes in StoreFront with all of those hundreds of stores, and you see this steep decline in March last year. But oddly enough, that didn't last that long, that decline, and then you saw it gradually going up again. And now, what I find simply funny is that you go and look at the stores that customers are doing, and all of them seem to have a COVID section in there because everybody jumped on that opportunity, and we have people selling disinfectants for your hands, print shops selling that. Yeah. Fantastic.
I can't help thinking. I got a little curious. I know that Jacques probably also wants to ask you, and Jacques, you just beat me, and I will get So I was thinking, Lawrence, when you have that ability to check, for example, on what kind of products that you sell in the storefronts, is it also possible for you to see if there is a split in what you would see as offset jobs and digital printed jobs?
Not really, because even though we have two products, we have Apogee StoreFront targeting the commercial printers, Asanti StoreFront targeting the large format printing market. Ultimately, it's twice the same technology. And if I look at the stores of customers, I also see that most of those stores are really a mix of both types of products, because you're, as a printer, you're offering a service to your customer, and none of your customers is going to say, I'm into commercial print work. No, they're an insurance company. They need and data sheets and brochures and posters and a lot of non-print stuff. So you end up with stores that are really a mix of everything.
Mm-hmm. Lawrence, just to cut in one question straight away, because I think with your storefront, I think you already said it in your preliminary text that you sent, but I think you mostly, correct me if I'm mistaken, you mostly target like B2B stores. Yeah, that's a big difference that we have to emphasize on, that it's mainly B2B rather than B2C. So there's quite a big difference with some other presenters that we'll go to see today, but nonetheless, very interesting. Yeah.
You have also been in the market for some time. I mean, I think that, you know, sometimes people can think of Agfa as first of all like chemical and plates and, you know, that part of the industry way before we talk internet and things like that. But you were pretty fast of wet proofing and pretty fast of workflows and pretty fast in also with the storefronts kind of things. I mean, how is it to keep up with? I was just about to say with the young ones. Can you keep up with them or?
No, but it's a company culture of going for innovation, and I mean 175 years ago or so, it were colorants, and it was pigments to actually allow you to print bright and vibrant colors, and 175 years later, indeed or so, it's once again, in a way, pigments, but in a completely different application. So it's always trying to find new ways, new markets, new products, and software definitely fits in there.
But that was my curiosity was about the fact that, you know, I remember I worked for Xerox like 20 years ago, something like that, and then they sold some Israeli web-to-print software, very expensive but very comprehensive for the time, basically. But I mean, but there was not a lot of choices to choose from, and I was just thinking today. First of all, there must be a way higher demand for web-to-print solution from all PSPs or from many PSPs. But I was also thinking that when you as Agfa have been in the market for some time, you have a legacy which is positive and good, but you also could have some stress factor because some people using maybe not the legacy technology, but using some of the latest technology. And I was just curious about how important that is in you keeping up to speed with everything in the market, basically.
Well, but when you talk about market approach, indeed, and that's a bit my frustration as a product manager, having a wonderful web-to-print product, but you cannot see it separate from our distribution, which is our sales teams, and our sales teams essentially, where are they? They are mainly in talking to printers.
Yeah,
which is why you see storefront typically at printers, indeed, as a B2B solution for their customers. And that's a bit frustrating because we have in Belgium, for example, the Red Cross uses storefront because they do a lot of local events. They need to personalize the posters for events like that. Printing is done elsewhere, but they're using storefront. And I see that and I'm frustrated because I have a solution that could be put in quite a lot more places, but being Agfa is at the same time an advantage and a bit of a disadvantage in that, yeah, we're in the market that we're in, and you have to live with that.
Fair enough, I take. So, Jacques, what is your expectations from the demos today? Because we're soon digging into a real demo, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, well, I'm looking forward to all of the presentations, I must say. But matter of fact, the thing that I'm looking for is trying to find out where the main difference lay between, for example, a storefront from Agfa or the other ones that will come who will address probably also different markets. Like Laurens said, and I think it's great that he emphasizes on that as well, that maybe within the Agfa solution, they target a certain segment where you guys are really, that you have in your portfolios, and maybe some other markets that are a bit more difficult to grasp due to the things that you just say. So yeah, that's the thing that I think it will be very, very interesting for all of the attendees and the ones that will be looking, that we can compare by the end of the webinar, and to make our minds up what is useful or necessary for us to choose, or even to go further in. So yeah, looking forward.
Perfect. So Laurens, are you ready to dig in and show what you have in your offerings?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to.
Okay. Jacques and I, we will turn off our microphone and camera, but we will be there all the time. Don't worry.
Okay, take it away, Laurens.
Okay, let me. switch over to screen sharing. And here we are. Okay, so quick brief recap. One of our taglines at Agfa used to be the complete picture, and that's indeed what drives us, offering customers complete solutions. And as Morten pointed out, that's pre-press products. We're active in printing, large format printing, industrial printing. But if you claim to indeed offer the complete picture, that means that you also go effectively to the customer. So we have Apogee StoreFront as a web-to-print solution for commercial printers in between the customers and a workflow like Apogee prepress, and for large format printers in between those print buyers and that Asanti workflow, we have Asanti StoreFront, which doesn't mean you cannot use those systems with other workflows, because next to a direct link to the workflow, you have support for things like FTP or PrintSphere, which is our own version of a Dropbox for the graphic arts industry. Now, this is a tool for printers predominantly to offer a service to their customers. So let me show you a number of examples of products and services that you can offer within StoreFront. And let's start with something pretty straightforward. This is for a shop for a virtual distributor of sportswear. Obviously, they have a number of catalogs for all of the gear that they are selling. People in the different retail stores need to order them so they can go in there, can have a look at what such a catalog looks like. And if that's the right one, they pick a quantity and they order it. But they cannot just order it, print it. It can also be ordered electronically. And that's simply for a printer, a way to enhance their service. And at that point in time, they might just charge a little service fee for that. I think most of the stores I'm going to show you include pricing, but it's handy to know that I think about 60% of the stores that our customers operate actually don't show any pricing in them, because pricing is something between the company and the printer, is not something that is relevant necessarily for the print buyers. So this is an example of a on-demand product that gets printed the moment that the customer actually needs it. You can also put stock products in there. So if we go to the miscellaneous category, for example, something like a memory stick, which is what we call a pick and pack or a stock product. You simply, once again, have a quantity, you select a certain capacity, and you could add a little personalized text on the memory stick if you add that option. And that, of course, increases, in this case, the price slightly. So stock products is something that you can also have in the store. You can actually display stocks, which is handy for customers because that tells them how much print they still have available to them. You can also choose not to do that. And for that, let me show you another example. And I'm switching now to a store in Portugal, or rather for a Portuguese customer, I should say, which offers quite a lot. And the stock product I simply wanted to show you is simply because I like it. And it definitely will appeal to printers, a process guide with multiple pictures showing what you're actually ordering. So on-demand products, stock products, actually in real life, a small part of the portfolio, if you look at a store like this, and that is especially true for the sign and display, or the stores with a focus on sign and display, typically the most dominant type of product in there is what we call an uploadable product. That's a product like this flyer over here, for example, where you once again can define how do I want the front and the back printed, what's the type of substrate that I want to print on, do I want it plastified, matte, or yes or no, and what's my delivery requirement. The moment that you actually want to add that to the cart, you're being asked to upload a file. And I'm going to show this functionality in another store where I have some extra fancy options activated for it. So this is a third example of a store. And here, if I want to print posters and I want to do that, for instance, on a synapse synthetic paper, I have similar options, but what I can do in this store is I can effectively define a size. So imagine that I indeed want some in-store posters, or I simply want a decorative poster. I can type my own dimensions or pick from a predefined list, select the quantity, select a type of synthetic paper, and when I then hit the upload button, I once again get that user interface. And I like showing this product because if I now effectively upload a file to it, let's do the airplane. What you then see is that StoreFront offers built-in live pre-flighting. So the moment the file is uploaded, it's placed into the selected output size, and you now see two warnings because the aspect ratio of the image that I uploaded is not the same as the print size that I requested. And I will not have full bleed. So I have over here a toolbar, can start fixing that. But if I push it too far, live pre-flight will once again at some point in time kick in, and you see it happening here. It's a visual indication there. It's also a list here telling me, watch out, your resolution of your image, because you've been enlarging it, it's still okay print-wise, but the quality will not be as good as it really should be. And I think that's one of the advantages of Agfa as a offering a web-to-print service is we have all this knowledge from our backend systems, things like indeed PDF processing, things like pre-flighting, and that technology partly gets built into a platform like StoreFront. Now in here in StoreFront, we only do a very basic pre-flight check because you don't want to scare your customers away with all kinds of obscure messages about embedded profiles and so on. So StoreFront only checks a couple of things like, are the fonts available? Is the image resolution correct? It leaves the full in-depth pre-flight check to the actual stage behind that, which is the prepress system that processes the file. So in this case, this could be a decorative poster that I want to put up in my hobby room, for example. But of course, not everyone always has a layout tool available to create the publication that they need and then upload a PDF. That's why in StoreFront, you also have what we call the online editor, and the online editor obviously allows you to do the layout directly in the shop itself. So I'm switching back to my Sundiver store, and in my promotion category, I have over here an example of that, which is this poster. So this is something that you might typically have indeed at a retailer who have a weekly promotion, need to each week put some product, give it some attention and say, hey, you get a super deal on this one. It's a super saver. And for this, as you can see, I can now do the personalization of the document within the shop itself. And the technology we're using behind the scenes for this is something that, that you might be familiar with. It's a product called Chili Publisher that we implemented, which means that the original layout, and we have two layouts in this case, this one, but in InDesign, which was used to create the original layout, I also made a variant, a layer where we have 3 products that we promote. So you design a product like this in InDesign, export it to XML using the plugin that we ship with StoreFront. You then put it in the store, and now somebody in the retailer can go in here, can set a start and end date for the promotion, and can then upload an image for the product that they want to promote. That, in this case, is something that I'm uploading myself, but we can also, or the printer can configure StoreFront, of course, that it has a library of images and that the retailers must pick from that library because those are all pictures shot in the studio of the retailer. So in this case, I'm running a promotion on the ketchup. I still need to tweak the image a bit. So let me change the cropping so that it's nice and centered within the image. And don't ask me what a ketchup actually costs, but it seems reasonable to me. Notice I typed the price. It's styled a bit specific. That's because you can have little scripts running in the background and doing things like looking at the price and taking the decimal value and applying a different style sheet on that, which you can also use, for example, to validate things like telephone numbers in business cards and stuff like that. Find the real one. And that automatically gets put here at the bottom. I think if you look at the way stores are being used, this is the second most popular option in there. Uploadable products are definitely something that is most used. But this, of course, is where you really, as a printer, offer a valid, valuable service to your customer. And believe it or not, but even today, very often in stores, the first use case for this is business cards. We can always joke with it, but that's often how web to print gets introduced by our customers towards their customers. And from then on, you see those shops gradually going bigger as more and more different types of products get added to it. Things like this, customization. Obviously, you do not always want to type everything in the web interface, because if you're doing things like campaigns, that could quickly take simply quite a lot of time. So what you can also do is, and this is for small campaigns, you can also do the customization by importing an Excel file. So here I have an example of a postcard with on the front an image, on the back an address and an optional personalized message. And this is a type of card that I want to send, for example, to my 50 most active customers, the ones buying a lot of surfing gear, but I don't want to each time type their name. So this product is set up that it can actually import Excel files. So you pick a file, and that file can contain things like name, address. It could contain quantities. It can contain other personalization data. And when you now open this, what you now, well, you don't see it happening, but what is happening in the background is that we have actually also written a pre-flight profile or engine for Excel files to check if all the fields in that Excel file are valid, if the quantities that you specified are actually allowed quantities, and so on. But the good thing about this is that, yes, I now have automatically a number of different cards in here, but I can still do last minute checks here. So if we look in this case, hi, big L, next time you better be. I can still do last minute changes in there and then send that off to production. This, just to be clear, is not meant for big promotional campaigns, big direct mail campaigns where you're sending personalized messaging to 20,000, 50,000 people. This is really meant for small projects, let's say up to about 200 different personalized versions of the cards. Because it's, of course, it's all done in the cloud and done within StoreFront itself. So that's VDP processing within StoreFront. Let's maybe turn our attention to, let's call it a bit more complex products. And that's typically something that you see quite a lot in large format printing, where it's not just the printing that needs to take place, but you also have the mounting of the print on a wall, or you have other products that need to go with it. For that, in StoreFront, we have what we call kit products. And a kit product is a combination of 2 or more different products. I'm going to show you those from a store of one of our customers in Belgium. And they have kit products, for example, when it comes to displays. Even something as simple as a roll-up essentially is a combination of 2 products. So if I look at this roll-up, it is actually a 420-gram stay flat, which gets printed on, and then the roll-up. And the roll-up might, for instance, be offered in 4 different colors. So you need to go through a little wizard where you first upload the file for your roll-up, and then you get all of the options of, do you want a black roll-up? Do you want the aluminium shiny one? Do you want another version? Or when it comes to textile frames, for example, I have over here this frame. And here you see that it's actually a mix of a textile on the front, a textile on the back. For both of them, you upload a file to actually define what you want on them. And then you see the aluminium profiles, the base plate, all of those things are combined in one product. And for each of them, you might get certain personalization options that you need to order in order to customize exactly what you need. And such a kit product could not just include products, it could also include services. And that's the last example I'm going to show you here, simply because I like it. This is a shop in Denmark for a political party. Actually, quite a few of our customers are setting up shops for things like elections and so on. But what I particularly like about this one is that they are selling support in this shop. And they are selling support by the quarter of an hour. So if you don't have the time as a print buyer, or you don't have the skills to actually personalize your own campaign material, you can, in this store, order support. Somebody from the printer will get in touch with you, work out what exactly you need. And then there's this handy function in StoreFront where an administrator can impersonate a buyer. So they can log in as the buyer, they can personalize the document online, and can then add it to the shop and get back to the customer and say, it's in the shop, please check the layout, and if you like it, hit the order button. And at that point in time, if the shop is configured with online payment, obviously gets paid and the printing can actually take place. So that's a bit an example of the different types of products and services that you as a printer can offer using Apogee StoreFront or Asanti StoreFront. Now, configuring all of that is actually done in the back end, is done in this setup, this website, which we call Store Center. So this is where you actually manage everything. This is where you see, if you log in first on the dashboard, you see this many incoming orders, this many in production, this many shipped in the last 24 hours. Those are the newest orders. And then I can, from over here, ask, for instance, for a list of all of my pending orders or all of the orders awaiting approval. Because that's, once again, that's one of those services that you can offer as a printer. Imagine your customer is somebody who does inserts for medication or is in gambling. Two completely different industries, but they share one thing in common. And that is that whatever gets printed on a medical insert or whatever gets printed to promote gambling services, it needs to be checked not just by marketing to make sure that it's correct, but also by legal to make sure that what is on that document is legally allowed and meets all the guidelines. So in a storefront, you can set up multiple approval cycles that any order first has to go through the approval of marketing, then through legal. If one of them objects, you get a notification about that. You have to adapt your layout, re-upload it again within that order, and then it goes through the 2 validation steps once again. So order handling is definitely something that happens here, just like managing users, managing the store, managing products. And then you see this little gap before you actually go to who are the companies that we are setting shops up for, who is allowed to administer all of that, and what are the different types of media that we're using, what types of shipping do we offer, what payment gateways do we have, for example. Note that little gap. That's because anything that is to the left is something that the company that you as a printer set up your shop for, that's what they can do. They can manage their own users. They need to approve potentially all of those orders. They can even do a bit of the branding of their store, and they could even partially, at least, define products. And I say partially because, of course, you cannot allow your customer to do all of that. And realistically, we also have to put it like it is. Storefront was written so that created so that the customers that you set a shop up for can do a lot of the work themselves. Ultimately, we've learned, however, that that only happens in a small subset of all of the shops. It is usually the printer that does most of that work as well. But if products need to be added, then it's split into 2. You have a product, and just like with an InDesign job, for example, where you have a layout is based on a template, and a template is the underlying settings. So Martin and Jacques, they asked me to also show you how do you define an effective product. Well, that starts with a template, and because it's to the right-hand side, this is the stuff that are the base settings for the product. So let's go in there and let's define something. You see, I have a large library of different types of templates. I'm going to show you indeed one of the poster products, because that's the most versatile. And that starts with you saying, we can print something from a minimum size, 20 by 20 centimeters, for example, up to 3.5 meters by 5.5 meters. It needs this much bleed. This is the default media. How do we handle front versus back? What are the quantities that we allow people to use in stores? So that's the basic production definition, partly a commercial information, partly production related. Specifically for posters, you can then add a list of sizes, as I showed previously in the shop. You can allow for certain products to only use specific sizes, or you can give customers the freedom to pick whatever size they need within the store. And then you add options on top. Options obviously include things like what substrate am I going to print on, which is why there is a complete media library in StoreFront. But in here, I could add something like trimming. Up to file size, or things like use spot color for cutting. I can add an option like that to determine, are we actually going to just deliver it square, trimmed, or are we going to use a spot color within an uploaded PDF file as a trace for doing the cutting afterwards. So here you add all of the options that you need or that you want in the product, but this is the template. That doesn't mean that all of those options need to be used in the products that will be based on this template. You might afterwards create 2 posters in 2 shops, and one of them is offering the cutting option, the other one isn't offering the cutting option. The same is true for pricing. There is not one price attached to this product, but I have price lists so that in one shop I can offer this product type with one price, and in another shop I can offer it with another price. So let me take a price list that is empty at this point in time and show it to you. StoreFront has its own pricing engine. So in here, you can go from very, very basic things like it's a fixed price regardless how much, or it's a price per copy, up to, for poster printing, things like this formula where I can say, okay, when it's posters and you order just a few copies, I'm going to charge you a setup cost of 6 or 8 euros. When the volume is a bit higher, I'm going to stick to a setup cost of 6 euros. Then, if your total order is for this item is less than 5 square meters, my square meter price is 3 euros. If it's from 5 square meters to 25 square meters, I'm going to price drops. It's even more competitive if you go from 25 square meters to 100 square meters, 2.6, and anything above that, then we're talking about a fixed price of 2.5 euros per square meter. And then, last thing is, regardless of what you order, I'm not going to accept any orders unless the minimum order value of it is 12 euros. So you do pricing like this, not just for the base product, but also for things like all of the options, allowing you to define, for example, for the grommets, if it's printed on textile and it needs to be put on a wall somewhere, saying, okay, take the circumference of this product and I'm going to add 3 grommets per running meter, for example, and each grommet is going to cost this much. And then StoreFront, depending on the number of copies and the size, will automatically, of course, calculate all of that. As I mentioned earlier on, pricing is not a mandatory thing. A lot of shops simply don't show pricing, and then, of course, you don't need to define it here either. Same is true for packaging. If this is ordered, in which boxes am I going to put it? Because the size of the boxes and the number of boxes might determine the shipping price. That's optional. Only use it if you need it. Same is true for pre-flighting. Mentioned earlier on, it's just base settings like minimum resolutions to warn people to reject even a job. And the last one in the row, production. This is where I'm actually going to say, well, if this order needs to be processed afterwards by, for instance, an Asanti workflow, this is the ticket template that needs to be used. And that ticket template within the Asanti system defines the production parameters. And that essentially means that if she orders a print on, let's say, Friday afternoon, it goes through the store to Store Center, where the marketing manager over the weekend might see that order, might check if it is compliant with the guidelines of the company regarding the usage of the logo and stuff like that. She approves the order. Monday morning, a prepress operator logs into his Asanti workflow, and the job is already there with all of the administrative data in there, with all of the remarks that she might have added to the order. There is already a press selected there is already a number of parameters are already set so that you can get as quickly as possible to output, shipping, and of course, keeping that customer happy. So that's in a nutshell StoreFront. As I said, available in a version that automatically integrates with Apogee prepress, and then we call it Apogee StoreFront, and a version Asanti StoreFront, which directly integrates with our Asanti prepress workflow solution. But both platforms offer the same functionality, and both platforms also can be integrated with other systems using FTP or one of our other integration options. So I think that integration in production is definitely one of the key features of StoreFront. Aside from that, StoreFront is developed in Belgium and is also hosted in Belgium by us. Because at Agfa, we're also active in the healthcare market, do hosting of patient records in our data centers in Belgium, and we're using that same architecture and infrastructure also for hosting StoreFront. So with StoreFront, you get a solution that is hosted in Europe, compliant with GDPR, and using a setup that was driven with privacy and security of data in mind, which I think is also important. And the third takeaway, I think, is I've hoped that I've given you a good view of how versatile the platform is in half an hour, and I'm going slightly over time. Half an hour, you can't show it all. So what I invite all of you to do is to go to agfa.com/web2print with hyphens in it. And there you can see our two offerings. There you have an overview of all of the features, licenses, specifications, and so on. And that's it. Apogee StoreFront and Asanti StoreFront for you.
Fantastic. I really like this presentation, Lawrence. So that was, I mean, I know that it was like under time constraint, and we can always argue that we should have like at least 3-4 hours to continue, right?
Yeah, yes, please.
Yeah, I have one good takeaway before we see if there's any question, and that is basically that we made a little poll here, and 20% of the people that voted, I have not checked how many actually voted, but are considering to change while they were looking at your storefront. So either they are changing away from you or they are changing maybe to you.
I'm hoping for the latter, of course. Yeah.
And then we have a 40% who's planning to invest in Web2Print. So that means there's still like a market also for new potential customers in this segment.
If I can, I don't know whether it's up still, but on Print Week, there was this poll asking people, with COVID now, are there still any plans for Web2Print? Do you already have it? Do you plan to deploy it? And I was also amazed by the number of companies that are now looking into it, given the situation, the year that we've gone through.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of potential.
Yeah. One question I have just about, because your end screen was about the options between the two solutions, and then you had like the licensing and features and something like that. Is the way that you sell this, is that on license basis, or is it also like on a subscription basis, or both, or how does it work for you?
It's a subscription formula where you essentially have a monthly fee, and that is determined partly by how many stores you want, how many products you want, and how many features you want. So it's capacity features that drive your monthly fee, with, of course, you can from one day to another go up, but also go down. Mm-hmm. Because your customers, unfortunately, as a printer, your customers are not always that predictable, and may change their mind from one day to another on what they need from you.
Another thing I forgot to ask you in your introduction is, I mean, obviously you work with Agfa, otherwise you're just a very, very good ambassador for them, I would say. But I was just wondering, in your daily life and daily work, what is it that you do as a person?
Well, maybe some people know me from that other project of mine, which is this little website called prepressure.com.
Let's see. Are you sharing your screen?
I made 25 years ago out of sheer frustration about PostScript errors. I could not find anything online about what does this error mean. So at some point in time, I made a site about it, then really got bitten by the PDF virus, so to speak, added a large section on there about PDF and how it works and so on.
And what was the link, Lawrence? What is the website?
How do you mean link?
I mean, did you type in a link or
the web address?
The web address.
Sorry. Yes, I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Sorry.
No.
Prepressure.com.
Maybe just pop it in the chat section, so people can check it out. In the meantime, Lawrence, I had another question for you, because you just touched upon it. As you already explained, it's mainly for the B2B market. You touched upon it a little bit during your session. So a lot of us, the printers who are looking to change, are looking into a solution to actually be able to service their customers with a need, a B2B need. So in that respect, I think it's important, as you already pointed out, that they think for themselves, that it's not just plug and play, right? So you still have to fill the box with all the elements that you want to create for that customer. And I think the thing that you also pointed out, and maybe just if you can touch on that it's clear to everyone what the differences are between B2B, B2C, but then again also it depends the number of products, of course, that you're going to put into a site. But do you have more or less a general idea about how time consuming it is to set up like a general business-to-business storefront? Or is that just not possible?
No, because it really varies wildly. But what I've been amazed by is also the diversity of the solutions that our customers are offering to their customers. I mean, I've stumbled across shops that have been online for 5 years, for example, and that contain just 3 products. We used to have, I think for about 6 years, we had a shop in Switzerland. Well, it's really difficult to say. But the big difference, of course, between a B2B system that you build for a customer and one that is an open shop where you effectively have your product range available for everyone, is, of course, that in the latter case, your shop is essentially, that's where you sell. So you need to invest quite a lot of time in making sure that it is nicely, that it looks nicely, that it works functionally. Whereas in a B2B shop, it's more of a business tool in the end for your customers. So setup requirements are less stringent. And maybe I didn't reinforce that enough during my discussion, but Storefront actually allows you to do both of them. It allows you to create open shops that are available to anyone and that you can just go to on the web, or it allows you to create those private shops that are password protected and that are only available for a limited group of people within a company or within, let's say, a market segment.
We got a question from, I think his name is Tom Maine. He's asking, are there plans to be able to customize the looks of the front end of Storefront aside from the current option to change color and logo?
Yeah, it's...
That was why I was asking about legacy in the beginning, because that was how it was in the old times. Today we use style sheets, right?
Yeah. Well, our aim with Storefront is to offer a solution that a printer with, let's say, a minimum of 2 days of training is capable of setting up the shop and adding the products to it. So inherently, that means that it is not a solution where you have to start writing your own CSS and stuff like that. But I'm well aware, and that's something that that's general. That's an internet rule. The internet lives at the speed of the life of a dog, so to speak. So every year is like 4 years for other applications, and that means that you have to continuously do upgrades of your software indeed if you want it to look like the other solutions on the market, so that users feel comfortable in it.
So basically, what you're saying, Leurs, is that if we just keep not updating that feature on Storefront, then you will actually become something that everybody will strive for, because it is like ancient and like.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been offering this. If there had been a Drupa this time, it would have been Drupa number 3 for Storefront, so to speak. Okay. So it's a mature product. We're currently at version 5.7.1. We're doing it within the next 2 weeks. We're doing 5.7.2 to add a small tweak that one of our customers asked. But the big plan for the 6.0 version, and I'm not going to give any guarantees on when it will be available, but for that one is to move to an architecture like you have that in quite a few web environments today, which is block-based, where a thing like an order form is a block, where a product description is a block, where the navigation is a block, and you have the flexibility of putting those blocks where you want them for the particular store that you have in mind and configure them. So yeah, keeping it up is definitely something that we keep working on.
And what about, I must admit that I was taking care of technical stuff and marketing while you were presenting. So I listened to everything, but I may not have been paying attention to 100%. So maybe you answered this already. What about, I saw you're editing things like that. What about is it HTML5 that you're using for your entire storefront, both in front, back, and also in the editing tools, or what technology are you using?
Yeah. We kept, well, the website itself, I should say, has been for the longest time, has been HTML5 and is automatically responsive. Mm-hmm. So could even be used on a mobile device or on a tablet, for example.
Even an Apple device?
Even those, yes. Well, if you look at the evolution of phones, they keep getting bigger. Give it a few years and they will be as big as regular monitors, and the problem will have solved itself, of course. But the online editor, where you indeed personalize the print, that is also, we offered, next to Flash, we offered an HTML5 version, I think from 2.5 years ago or so. And in the last update, so in the 5.7 version, we simply stopped support for Flash, basically because the browsers have stopped supporting Flash. So we really had to push out the message to our user base in, you need to switch, or rather, we will do an update, and within that update, we will automatically convert your documents from the Flash-based version to the HTML version, because we need to move forward. The browsers move forward, and you have to, and we have to follow with that. So it's all HTML5 now.
That makes sense. And sorry, Jacques?
Yeah, just maybe just to switch from the technical side again to some thinking about a lot of the printers, as we said before, and that's something that in a formal life and with some of the considerations that that there were for printers, is that in your solutions, and you already touched upon it as well, that they have to think what service their customer needs, right, and what they have to build in a B2B website, as you said, what they're going to build to be able to satisfy the customer needs. And in that order, I think it's also very interesting to say that apart from the technical stuff, which a web-to-print solution has to be, there's also like the practical side of things that you rightfully said, that you have to think also about the cost if you're going to build a solution for your customer. And that's something that we discussed earlier, that if you're going to sell the product to your customer, it's also quite a bit of work just to know what the customer wants and how to implement that in the solution that you're going to build, right?
Yeah, and I think we're a good partner for that, which is why you also asked us to publish an article on the INKISH website, which I did not write a blatant sales copy on there. I actually did an 8 things we learned from setting up B2B shops. So I think that can also be a handy reference for the people who are participating.
But I was actually referring to that.
But that is why we love Agfa, because they do what we tell them to. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, gentlemen, we have to, we got from a competitor, Kelvin Bell from VPress. He says, great demonstration, well done, and thank you. And I think it's because he's already heading over to the Happy Printing, which is the next session we have here on INKISH Learn With Us. Lawrence, I would like to thank you very much for your participation. I think it was a wonderful presentation and a fantastic head start for a few days here that I believe will be quite interesting for everybody. So I just want to say thank you very much. And maybe, Jacques, can you head over to the next session and welcome Sven and Jean-Pierre. And then thank you very much. I have sent a link in the messages here to the audience that you can just click that one, and then you are almost in the next session here. And anything you want to say on the very last note here, Lawrence?
No, thanks for having me, and wishing you all the best with this event. It's definitely, I think, a boon for our industry that you set up things like this.
Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Okay, bye.